It's no good by the door. Well, just need to put this mic somewhere just for today because obviously it can only go so far. Here, can I borrow this pad? Sorry. It's going to just be a mic stand. This mic is pretty sensitive, so I'm not too worried about it. And I'll talk. I generally talk pretty loudly. All right. Wow. So sorry to be running a little bit late here. I got a little sweaty trying to scramble around in my office all the way up on the fourth floor mezzanine. And give myself enough time. But anyway, so this is environmental ethics, right? Good. Philosophy 310, we meet on Tuesday and Thursday at noon. And we'll generally get started right at the top of the hour, right at noon. I sent out the syllabus, and I have hard copies of the syllabus here with a couple of minor corrections. Maybe just one minor correction. So I'm really looking forward to this. I apologize about the room. I had no choice over it. It's odd that we study environmental ethics here in a windowless room, and it's very crowded, and I understand that. So you'll just have to bear with it, okay? It's going to get kind of maybe stuffy, maybe. I think I can still put in a room for a room change, and I should do that because this is really full, okay? So pay attention, and I'm almost positive I can get a different room. All right? I'm not sure what building it'll be in, though, but I need to do that. I need to ask our office manager, Noah, to stop working on his art for a little while. Noah's Ark was the first endangered species act. Anyway, it was, quite literally. Mythologically or probably. Anyway, turn that off. I have a bunch of lecture slides ready for my first lecture, and we're just going to hit the ground running and really get going here. I've already worked up a sweat, as you can see, and I'll be putting all my lectures on YouTube, which is why hopefully sometimes my video camera malfunction, or sometimes there are too many files on my desktop computer upstairs, and you can clean them out, and I forget to do that, and then anyway, sometimes there's some glitches in uploading it. I think this term I've got all the glitches worked out, and hopefully I will get every minute of every lecture on YouTube. And my YouTube channel is Cloud Coyote. All right, and I don't know why I just wanted to make it a YouTube channel name, and it ended up being my Gmail name too for the system here at PSU. So anyway, but that's my YouTube channel, Cloud Coyote. It's the only YouTube channel with that name. And all of my lectures from last term, with almost all of them, are up there on my YouTube channel. And that's all I reserve it for. And that's actually my only social media presence. If you can call YouTube a social medium. But because this is my passion and my life's work, teaching philosophy, studying philosophy, and the administration doesn't have any problem with putting my lectures on YouTube. And so for whatever they're worth, I just put them up there. And if only for my family and friends and whatnot, but hopefully, some other people are interested and will watch them. They're just philosophy lectures, so they're not exactly the most riveting entertainment, unless you're really into philosophy, like I am. But anyway, so that's what I'll be doing, putting all my lectures on YouTube. And that's why I think that's a pretty good place for the camera, actually. I think I'll just try to put it there every time. And hopefully I've got it zoomed in at the right distance. So anyway, this is environmental ethics. I prefer, if I was to title this class myself, I have a couple alternative titles that I would prefer to this title. But this is the title that academic philosophers and departments of philosophy have settled on around the world pretty much. Sometimes you'll take an environmental philosophy class. In fact, about probably half the classes, they have the word environmental in them that are not science, right, or environmental studies classes or environmental science, but are humanities classes. Half of them are probably environmental philosophy, and half of them are environmental ethics. But there are all kinds of things, different branches of philosophy. You could do environmental epistemology, you could do environmental aesthetics, really appeals to me, actually. We get into some aesthetics at some point along our journey this term. But they call it environmental ethics. And so over the years, I've taught it primarily as an ethics course, all right? And ethics is a difficult study in any event. And it's particularly difficult when we inquire about the moral dimensions of our relationships with non-human entities, with ecological wholes, with individual non-human animals, with species, with land, air, water, wildlife, earth, air, fire, water, all that stuff, right? What are the moral dimensions of our of human relationships with land, air, water, wildlife, species, ecological wholes? Species are a form of ecological whole. I'll use that term quite a bit, that term ecological whole, and it'll become self-explanatory to you. You'll understand what I mean by that. It includes a whole range of different things. The climate system is obviously an ecological whole. The Earth as a whole is a giant ecological whole. Anyway, there are all kinds of different levels of ecological wholes, and it's a pretty loose term, but what I don't mean, and it includes species the way I use it. The species constitutes sort of a temporal, over many, many generations, right? A whole, right? Continuous genetic lineage, which is a whole, can be thought of quite easily as a whole. So I consider species ecological wholes, but not individual animals. That would be, if you want to take a course on our moral relationships with individual animals, you'd want to take an animal rights course. We do study animal rights a little bit, but not very much. We only spend maybe 1.5 classes on that. So I stick to environmental ethics, with the emphasis on ethics, and we study some pretty heavy stuff. We study some heavy metaphysical questions that normal human, intra-human ethics courses where we just consider human situations, other humans, the moral dimensions of our relationships with other humans. We don't have to ask some of these deeper, more penetrating questions. For example, what is the moral status of our climate system, of Earth's climate systems? What is the moral status of a species? Or if you just want to stick with animal rights, what is the moral status of Roy? That's Roy the dog. He comes to class, and if anybody can't have him here, then please just let me know, but I don't want you to stand out either, so just talk to me after class if you have a problem, and I can easily not have him be here, okay? But hopefully it'll work out so he'll get to be here. But I don't want to put any pressure on anybody, and anybody feel, so anyway, just leave it at that. If you have an issue, then just let me know, all right? And that'll be the end of the road this time. That's okay. But anyway, Professor Vincent Mulier, you can just call me Professor Mulier. You can also call me Vincent. I'm a lifelong environmentalist, I could say. Probably, I'd even be happy to wear the mantle of a radical environmentalist. But we need to be very careful with what that means. Don't go jumping to conclusions, about me just because I said that. Obviously, that I know I'm a philosopher, so that means a whole lot. I would need to spend the whole term to unpack what all that means. But the heart of this course is trying to identify the axiological and normative positions. Those are big words, I know. We'll get to them in a minute. That radical environment. We're going to spend this class covering all kinds of different accounts of the moral dimensions of our, and including extractivist, resource exploitive justifications, right? Apologies, not just apologies, but endorsements, and say this is what we should do. We should use whatever we can have access to, right? The dominant, right? That's the mainstream point of view. Mainstream natural resource ethics is predicated on the idea that humans have moral status and everything else does not. Everything else is property. Everything else has no inferiority, no story, no moral value, no value other than its reduction to use value for human beings, right? That's mainstream. So we have to understand that too. That's heavily built on utilitarianism, by the way. And conservationism is utilitarianism applied to natural resource policy. All right? That's what we want to understand just today. Utilitarianism and conservationism. We really take off. All right? We hit the ground running. But so I did my doctoral thesis at the University of Oregon and finished that in 2001. And then kind of took a hiatus away from academia and practiced law, of all strange things. I was a lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer, for a few years. And then I started doing this partway through that, and then I was doing both for a while. I was teaching philosophy here and also trying to maintain my criminal defense practice. And finally I said, to heck with that, I'm tired of renting out my brain for these far more challenging, right? Philosophy is far, far more. You need every fiber of your mind, right, and your heart and your soul, you know, however that's defined, to do philosophy well, and it's much more satisfying. So I finally gave up the lawyer thing, and now this is all I do, and I'm an adjunct professor. You know, and I'll proudly put that title on maybe put it in parentheses. But you know, I realize a lot of adjuncts are overworked. I'm not, because I try to simplify my life so I don't have to be overworked. But they hold up the university. You know, these adjunct professors, 2/3 or 3/4 of classes at every university in the country now. Almost, certainly every public university is taught by an adjunct who's making substandard, just ridiculous wages. And yet they're doing it because it's their passion, right? That's why I do this, because it's my passion. So that's just a shout out of, maybe show a little respect to all your adjunct professors. And I proudly identify myself as such, and I feel it gives me a certain liberty, actually, I mean, what the hell do I have to lose? I can get up here and say the most outlandish things. Most of the time I'm just trying to provoke you into thinking, right? Especially if I see a bunch of dead faces out there. I'll just come out here like some flaming anarchist, radical Marxist, and shock people, and then they'll wake up and start paying attention, right? And then I'll say, nah, that's not really, I was just trying to shake things up a little bit. Anyway, I'm a mixed bag, really. And a lot of anarchists and socialists are actually quite conservative. In fact, when we get into the meta-ethics, which is the heart of the course, questions about the nature of value in natural resources, questions about the nature of value in ecological wholes, then you'll see that a lot of the meta-ethics that radical environmentalists draw on are really kind of conservative. This notion that the earth has more, that there are moral values embedded, in the order of the universe, right? Is traditionally a very kind of a conservative outlook. It's anti-utilitarian, environmental ethicists. Right? Especially the way I teach it, we're not even doing philosophy until we get past utilitarianism, okay? That's why we hit the ground running. We just try to do utilitarianism real quickly, get it out of the way, and then we move on to wise use. We get that out of the way. And that's a whole different tradition, which we'll cover on Thursday, is wise use tradition. That's also not utilitarian. But anyway, if I was to title the class, I would give it the title of my textbook, which I'm currently writing. And the title is Enlightenment Earth Ethics, all right? Because we're going to cover some heavy-duty Enlightenment thinkers. We have to, and we're going to use them to show how the different accounts of our moral dimension, of our moral relationships with non-human entities, can be explained with reference to different Enlightenment theory, Enlightenment moral philosophy can be used fruitfully, I think. And I just try to do that in my book, and I try to do that in my class. Show how we can draw on the resources of Enlightenment thinking, both the German Enlightenment and the Scottish Enlightenment, primarily. And then some other Enlightenment, and by that I mean 17th, 18th, and 19th century thinkers, all the way up to including Darwin. Darwin looms very large in this class. Darwin is extremely important to the emergence of environmental ethics, all right? So I would call it, but if you throw that out, Enlightenment Earth Ethics, if that's not satisfactory, then just call it Natural Resource Ethics. All right? I don't mind that title either. Even that's preferable to environmental ethics. Although the word resource, I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I can clarify that and show how even that word's okay from my point of view. Anyway, so I grew up in a Sierra Club family. My dad was still joined the Sierra Club in college. And I went backpacking every summer for 3 weeks while I was growing up. So I'm a big outdoor recreation enthusiast. That's one of the hallmarks of an environmentalist, right? But my relationship with the outdoors is much more than just recreation. I would say I have something like a spiritual I'm comfortable using that kind of word, but it's not associated with anything religious. All right? It's just the sense that there's something far greater than myself, and that the values of ecosystems and all these beautiful things that we're going to be encountering through the course of our journey through environmental ethics call out a sense of reverence, right? It's a secular reverence, though. It's a metaphysical reverence that is unavoidable in my view. So, and we're not really doing environmental ethics until we get beyond ecological wholes have value in themselves, non-instrumental value. Okay? Which a religious person like Pope Francis might say is because God made them. Right? That would be one explanation for why they have value in themselves. But that's not what a radical environmentalist is saying. Right? A radical environmentalist is saying they just have value in themselves. Their value is ecogenic or terragenic, or right, earth generated by an ecosystem, right? Not something that humans come along and attack by recognizing it as useful, right? But in itself. Anyway, so that's kind of where we're going. There was a hand up over here? Yes.
Isn't the environment argument disadvantage to utilitarianism? Because, I mean, how would they get happiness? You know, the utilitarians is about their happiness.
Yes, that's a very good point. Are you one of our philosophy majors?
No.
No. We have 2 philosophy minors and 1 philosophy major, I think. So you don't need to identify yourself. But yeah, you know, that's right. And that's what's so interesting is that the dyed-in-the-wool conservative, the dyed-in-the-wool cultural conservative, who takes a conservative kind of, you know, traditional family values view of bedroom issues, right, including abortion and, you know, marriage, sex before marriage, homoerotic stuff, all that. You know, that conservative, cultural conservative, typically, guess who his biggest enemy is? Philosophically, among the various philosophers in the last Enlightenment thinking. Utilitarianism. They're just the devil incarnate, right? Because they're saying, utilitarians tell us that good and bad and right and wrong are just functions of feelings, functions of whether or not something makes you happy, right? Which, of course, a cultural conservative would decry, because the cultural conservative says, damn it, it's just wrong, you know, or it's just right, regardless of consequences, right? So anyway, the conservative tends traditionally to go toward the Kantian account of our obligations to one another, or to a natural law theory, right? And that's what the strongly religious people tend to go to, is a natural law theory, that we know right and wrong by observing the design of the universe, the design of the thing we're talking about, right? By knowing the design, then we know the right use of that thing. That's natural law theory, or natural design theory. And that's what we'll cover on Thursday, all right? But today, I just want to cover utilitarianism, and you're right. Can you tell me your name?
Scott.
Scott. Do you have a brother in this class? There are 2. What was your last name?
Samuel.
Scott Samuel. Yeah, there's a Craig Samuel and a Scott Samuel. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, we're going to cover that on Thursday, and that can be used. Remember, all of the different traditions we look at don't amount to a view about what we should do. They represent forms of argumentation. So we'll encounter natural law theorists who are strongly in favor of protecting Mother Earth, right? And that's actually the kind of language that Pope Francis uses. Okay, just to be clear, I was not brought up in any religious tradition. I've never been to church. I'm not interested in church. I'm not interested in religion. But when I recognize, you know, something as a teaching moment, this guy Pope Francis, who's the head of the Catholic Church, right? He released this document, this encyclical letter. And he comes at, and basically what he offers is a classical natural law, natural design argument for protecting land, air, water, and wildlife. All the way down the line, biodiversity included. He's a radical environmentalist from a natural law theory point of view. Ron Arnold, the guy we're reading for Thursday, is also a natural law theory. That's what he's relying on. At the core of his argument is a natural law argument, a natural design argument. All right? So in other words, natural design could be used by the Pope to defend. Right? He talks about water. He says the natural design of water. If you study the hydrological cycle, and he was a scientist, you know, before he went on his religious path, right? When he was a young man, he wasn't, you know, and he went to the priesthood somewhat later. He already got a master's degree in science, so he knows about these things, right? Anyway, when you study the hydrological cycle, you see that water spreads itself out, goes to all living things, right? It gets drawn up into the sky, and then the clouds drop it all over the land, and then it flows down, and all the animals have access to it, right? All the plants and the birds and, you know, the trees have access to it. So based on that, on the natural design of water, Pope Francis argues that it is more immoral, is dispense off water, right? Prevent water from going where it naturally goes. Fascinating. And then, of course, the natural design arguments that say we should use up the earth, or not use it up, obviously, but keep using it, digging into it, and extracting as much as we can. Those arguments, those natural design arguments, are predicated on this basic idea that the human being is the ultimate, right? The flower of creation. And the human being, therefore, is entitled to do whatever it will with everything else, because everything else is just part of what we have power over, right? Dominion over. So anyway, you'll see stewardship, natural law arguments, and then you'll also see extractivist, right? Resource extractivist natural law arguments. And the one we're reading on Thursday from Ron Arnold is resource extractivist. He's a strong defender of extracting natural resources and private property and all this sort of thing. But I do have a bunch of lectures notes that I want to go through today. So I sent these out. Everyone should have gotten emails from me. I don't use D2L. That's our home. Oikos is the Greek word for home. So everyone should have gotten an email that just a few hours ago that included these lecture notes. And then yesterday or the day before, you should have gotten an email that, or maybe at the end of last week, you should have gotten our syllabus. Okay? And I hope people resolve the issues with getting the first 2 or 3 readings, right? Today's reading and Thursday. If you have those issues, just work it out. Send me an email and we'll work it out, all right? But all of the readings should be available. Yes?
The Ron Arnold one I had trouble getting in because we have the book that is in at the library. And then
Well, that's no good. I can't believe it's not on the internet. That's just
well,
some.
the link kept crashing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't let me.
Maybe it's not on. Maybe this. I don't know. But don't worry. It's everywhere. It's all over the internet.
Well, yeah, I was able to go to the library, find the original book and it's there.
Okay. I'll give you a little secret here. Heads up. Ron Arnold's work is not peer-reviewed, and it's really the only work that I would say that of. And I will not hesitate to go after this guy because he is a propagandist, the first order and most insidious order. And I assign his work because someone who, in his position, is the only one who would have the dim-wittedness and the testicular fortitude to put forward these natural law arguments that are predicated on this idea that humans are far better than everything else, and we should just, and the earth is resilient, and we all live upstream. You'll read about that. Anyway, but that's why I say his work is all over the internet. It's not just some academic ivory tower thing, right? This guy appears on Fox News all the time. He heads up this quote-unquote non-profit organization, which is really just his gravy train, the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise. That's his gig, and he appears frequently on Fox News and some of these other propaganda channels. So that's why, and I'm almost positive every single publication of his, he's written quite a bit, and it's all on his nonprofit website, CFDEF, I think, Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, so whatever those, acronym.org. But you can easily find it, and all of his essays, all of his writings are on there, and that's one of his most influential pieces, the one that I asked you to read for Thursday. So we read his work, and we read, some other things that are questionable a little bit. Let's see, what else can we read that's, like I said, I think he's the only work that I would say is not really peer-reviewed. Some other, what does that mean, peer-reviewed? It means, it's the engine of academic research, right? It's the engine of science, it's the engine of all development in medicine and science and art, and not necessarily art, but philosophy and sociology and psychology, right? It means that whatever you have written that you're assigning to your students has been reviewed and professionally before it was published by a panel of people who are experts in the field, right? And if it's schlocky, they're not going to allow it to be published, right? And if it needs correcting, then they'll send you a letter saying you need to correct this, this, and this, and this. And then we'll consider it, et cetera. But peer review is a very high standard, right? And in most cases, what it means is that other philosophers, because most of what we read is academic, professional philosophy, written by professional academic philosophers, right? For mostly a professional audience, right? Not a lot of popular, people on the street read most of what we are going to read this term. And some of it's quite difficult, right? So for those of you who haven't taken philosophy or haven't spent time on really difficult theoretical material, then you might be in for an awakening. But it's rewarding, and it does get easier. And the more time you put in your philosophy reading, the more efficient you become in understanding. Take careful notes, but it's expected that you'll spend 2 hours outside of class for every hour you spend inside of class on the course material, right? So we spend 4 hours in class per week. That means it's fair to spend about 8 hours a week outside of class, on the readings, and when you have a written assignment due, all that goes into those 8 hours. And that's kind of the rule of thumb that I was taught when I was in college. For every hour you spend in class, you should expect to commit 2 hours outside of class. So if you're taking 12 credits, that means you're dedicating 36 hours a week, right, to your classes. But if you're taking 16, that means you're dedicating 48 hours. Anyway, and that's a lot, but that's what college is all about. College is supposed to be pretty darn hard. So sometimes you need to do the reading 2 times or 3 times, right? But after a while, like I said, you'll become better at understanding philosophy. The words will go around your head, and eventually your cognitive, whatever does that in your brain gets better at it. That happens quite rapidly, actually. One good thing about philosophy is that you do get smarter, because you think about thinking, right? And thinking about thinking makes you smarter. It really does. Because you learn the shortcuts, right? We've had 2,500 years of written philosophy since Plato, right? And these people have worked very hard, right, to show us, how reasoning proceeds. And it's very helpful to check in with, these great philosophers. Because it makes us smarter. All right, anyway, so I am a common earthman. All right, I would prefer to call this Enlightenment Earth Ethics or Natural Resource Ethics. I don't use E2L, forget it. So you have to either but I send emails out at least one a week, sometimes more than one, all right? You must either get in the habit of regularly checking the email address that you have on file with PSU, or you have to change it, right? So it's the one that you regularly check, okay? I do have the syllabi here, and I have attendance sheets too, so why don't I just get these going around? This class is really full, and I will put in a request for a room change, okay? This is just too stuffy. Maybe we'll get a really nice room with windows. And air conditioning, that wouldn't be very environmentally sustainable, would it? Well, so did they make it all the way over there? No. All right. I'm just passing back with them. All right, there should be 53 people, and I only printed out 55 of them, so I don't know. Some people don't show up on the first day. I don't know. What's that? Oh, you need one more? And this is the legitimate final copy, okay? So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this digitally out too. All right, I'm going to send this out to everybody in digital form so that you'll have, and then so anyway, discard the one that you have because it has a couple of errors on it. All right? I think the reading's all the same. I did not want you to read Gifford Pinchot in the past. I had people read Gifford Pinchot. And I got this inspiration at the last minute when I was putting the syllabus together. Okay, why not just assign this Braun Taylor piece, which is really a kind of a research paper, isn't it? I mean, he does all this research interacting with radical environmentalists, with Earth Firsters and Earth Liberation Front people, right? And eco-saboteurs, and he tries to understand what they're all about. And he writes an article, right, an essay. It's not really philosophy. Some of it's philosophy, and he is a philosophy professor, Braun Taylor. He's actually a very prominent philosophy professor. I forget where he teaches, but he's kind of been identified for many years with the deep ecology movement. Anyway, so I figured, okay, we'll read that, because utilitarianism, which is the lesson I want you to extract from today's class, I want you to understand utilitarianism and its natural resource management offshoot, right, which is conservationism. Conservationism is utilitarianism applied to natural resource policy. That's what the lesson I want you to have today. And in the past, I've had you read Gifford Pinchot, right? A couple, 3 chapters, but you don't have to read that. I accidentally left the link on there. That was the last little mistake I corrected in the syllabus. But you didn't have to read anything from Gifford Pinchot. In the past, you did. And I'll talk about Gifford Pinchot quite a bit throughout the term for various reasons. He's a very important historical figure. He's the founder, or at least the principal exponent of conservationism, of classical American conservationism, or sometimes it's just called Pinchotian conservationism. Leopold will call it Group A conservationism as opposed to Group B conservationism. You'll read Leopold for Tuesday, I think, yeah, Tuesday. And I've asked you to bring in the first, I've asked you to summarize 5 of our readings throughout the term. I've asked you to summarize that classic piece by Aldo Leopold. But let me just keep going with this. Sometimes I forget to turn on my lecture notes, so please, you should warn me, okay? You know why that is? Because I'd rather just do philosophy, and I neglect even the slightest administrative functions, right? Because I just, why not? Yeah, let's go do philosophy. And then I don't even turn the switch on or get the power going, and then everyone's just staring, and I wonder what's going on, and then, anyway, so let's not have these embarrassing moments, all right, that are embarrassing for you. Save me from that. All right, anyway, so there's our home, our oikos. Ecology and economy are both rooted in that Greek word, oikos. It's not a Greek yogurt that makes you feel good and all at home, and I'll buy that from my Mormon fuzzy family. Oikos. But no, it means home in Greek. And it's where we get economy. Economy is nomos, right? Oikos nomos, and that means home rules, okay? Home laws, home rules, okay? Ecology is home study of the home. And so, but it's obviously the roots of those words have slipped far away into the past. And now we talk about the economy and we talk about the ecology. But strangely enough, in mainstream discourse in Western societies, especially in our society, we almost always hear that the ecology needs to take a back seat to the economy, right? The study of the home needs to be subordinated